Good evening and welcome to the special election edition of NewsNight. I'm Robert Fornatero.
And I'm Juliana Brock. Tonight we'll give you an update on how the rest of last night's historic election occurred and reasons for why it may have played out the way it did.
We'll also be taking a look at both of the candidates' reactions to the results and promises they have both made.
All this and more coming up on NewsNight.
First, we'll be taking a heading over to our elections analyst, Ethan Rowinski, to give a play-by-play of how the rest of last night took place. Ethan?
Thanks, Robert. So when we closed out last night, Georgia had just been called earlier in the night. So that left our electoral map with Georgia and North Carolina both be called. We were waiting on all the Rust Belt states, Nevada, Arizona, along with Minnesota, and some of the various districts in Nebraska and Maine. However, very quickly after we stopped going live, Pennsylvania was called for Donald Trump. And that put him just a few electoral votes away from winning the presidency. That kind of shut off any of Harris's paths to victory unless she pulled a major upset victory in Nevada and Arizona. However, quickly that path was denied from her when Trump won Wisconsin in the Rust Belt and officially became the president-elect of the United States. Quickly after that, Michigan also went for Trump, though Minnesota did go for Kamala Harris. And though Trump did win the presidency at that point, that kind of just boosted and shut off even more of a tremendous victory for Trump at that point. All the various districts fell in how everyone expected them to. Nebraska went fully red except for their second congressional district, and all of Maine went blue except for I believe their first congressional district, the more northern part of the state. We are still waiting on Nevada and Arizona. Those specific results could take days due to some state laws that allow them to that allow them to count ballots as long as their absentee ballots are post-stamped by Election Day. So we may have to wait days for those results to come in. However, at this point, it doesn't truly matter because Donald Trump is our next president of the United States. And so, I mean, it was a wild night. Though, what was really interesting is, we were prepared for a long night, multiple days of coverage. Other news stations were majorly prepared for it. But it was a relatively normal night in terms of election coverage.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we got the results very quickly after. We didn't expect the results to come in as quick as they did.
Yeah.
We were expecting to wait until later into the week. So
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean,
Right.
it was strange, but that just kind of goes to show how strong Harris's victory, or how strong Trump's victory was in all of these different states. It wasn't just a small margin, it was a large margin.
Right.
Harris didn't flip, if we're looking at Biden's margin in every county versus Harrison's margin in every county, Harris didn't exceed a single margin in any county.
Yeah.
Not a single one, not even her home county is San Francisco.
Oh.
But it was clear that from very early on, kind of how me and my co-map guy Gavin, we were looking at it. The moment Georgia came in, that it was kind of the downfall from there, 100%.
Yeah, and I think we can see he's on a bigger pathway. I know if he gains the next two states, he'll be at 310.
Exactly.
And that puts him as a pretty serious victory. I know if we look at the election with Biden, he was at 306?
Yep.
Which puts him above Biden's grand total.
And not only the electoral votes, he's also winning the popular vote, which a Republican hasn't done since 2004. And even then, out of the last 9 presidential races, only 2, now George Bush and Donald Trump, have won the popular vote. So this was a clear and decisive victory for Trump, 100%. And I feel like there were a lot of people that expected it, but maybe not to this degree. 100%.
Yeah, no,
Right.
I agree 100% with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Ethan.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. But before we move on to the future presidency of Donald Trump, we have the details of what he and the vice president have been up to in recent years.
Kamala Harris was sworn in as the 49th Vice President of the United States on January 20th of 2021. She was the first Black American, the first woman, and the first South Asian American to assume this role. During her time as vice president, she traveled to more than 19 countries and met with 150 world leaders to strengthen alliances. Harris set a record for the most tie-breaking votes cast by a vice president by passing the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 and the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022. Harris capped the cost of insulin at $35 for senior citizens, cut prescription prices, and assisted in the passing of the bipartisan Safer Communities Act of 2022 for gun violence prevention. Harris expanded postpartum care through Medicaid and worked on the Fight for Reproductive Freedoms tour. She toured Planned Parenthood clinics that provide abortion services and met with lawmakers of at least 18 states to discuss the issue. Most of what Harris did during her years of being vice president contributes to what she stood for in her campaign.
Since leaving the Oval Office in January 2021, President Donald J. Trump has been able to remain as one of the most influential figures in the Republican Party. Through his relentless series of unpaid rallies, number of endorsements, and very memorable speeches, some for not good reasons, Trump has been able to reshape the entire direction of elections in the future. At a rally in March of 2023 in Waco, Texas, Trump spoke to voters saying, quote, "Our movement is about restoring the American dream. We will stand up for our country, our values, and our freedoms like never before," end quote. However, Trump's post-presidency influence has been overshadowed by ongoing legal issues and his 2 impeachment trials. This is because in 2019, Trump was first impeached on charges of abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. He was then impeached in 2021 for incitement of insurrection related to the January 6th Capitol attack. However, these controversies have only strengthened his appeal among core supporters, who see the impeachment as part of broader political effort to undermine his legacy.
So quite the difference within, the period of time here. And now it's really interesting now that we have the results. We're seeing how things are playing out. It's interesting to see, kind of going back to now it's all connecting, all coming together.
Yes.
So.
And I think one thing that you can see, that's pretty big between the candidates is one candidate, Donald Trump had a lot on his plate while trying to build up his campaign for the new election. And he obviously was very successful in doing so. And I know Harris as well, she was trying to do a lot to build up her support, especially because she came in very late, like we had mentioned before.
Yes. Well, it's definitely interesting because thinking about the fact his followers are very loyal, I don't know if I've ever seen a more loyal group of followers, considering, and the fact that he had this campaign, he was so successful with it. And with all that on his plate, it was a lot. But honestly, it worked out. It worked out in his favor. But it's definitely interesting to see how his followers took the setbacks and kind of used them as an upbuild for him. Even with all this, he can still do this. And I think it's definitely interesting. And obviously, there are different perspectives on that. But I think it's interesting nonetheless to see how it comes together.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. And then same with Harris, she had a very small amount of time to build up her support, even though she had been in the office. She had to start from scratch because everyone was anticipating that Biden was going to be going for his spot in the office, and it was seeming like that. And then ultimately he ended up dropping out, and then she had to fill in. So I think for all of the time that she had, she did really well for her campaign, and then Trump as well, he did very well, obviously. But yeah, no, it was a very, very close race.
Right, definitely, for sure.
And when we return, we will have the details on the policies of Trump's 2016 presidency and how his policies changed or stayed the same. We'll be right back.
Trump winning the 2024 election, his policies have been a prominent topic throughout his campaign. We have the breakdown of what his policies have looked like in the past. Additionally, we will have the details of what Project 2025 is and how it can affect your future.
During President Donald J. Trump's term from January 2017 to January 2021, he made multiple policy changes that were significant for America. Of his policies, he changed tax reforms, immigration restrictions, and started the trend of America First when it came to foreign policy. His administration also passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in 2017, aimed at reducing corporate tax rates and promoting economic growth. During his presidency, Trump continued to share his message of America First as he said, quote, "I was elected to represent the citizens of Pittsburgh, not Paris," end quote. During his announcement that the United States withdrew from the Paris Climate Agreement, most of this was ultimately overshadowed by Trump's 2 impeachment trials and multiple scandals. Yet, this has not severely impacted his outcome in the upcoming election.
Project 2025 is a 922-page policy wish list for the next Republican candidacy. It was written by the Heritage Foundation, one of Washington's most prominent think tanks, and was originally written in 1981, but has continued to be produced throughout the years. More than 100 conservative organizations have contributed to the document, and it is backed by a $22 million budget. Project 2025 covers a wide range of topics such as the government, abortion, immigration, climate change, and education. It is not directly linked to Donald Trump's campaign, and he states he has nothing to do with this. However, the foundation gives recommendations to his party, and 70 former Heritage Foundation employees now work for Trump's administration. The document highlights 4 main topics, which are, quote, restore the family as the centerpiece of American life and protect our children, dismantle the administrative state and return self-governments to the American people, defend our nation's sovereignty, borders, and bounty against global threats, and secure our God-given individual rights to live freely, what our Constitution calls the blessings of liberty, end quote. So I definitely find that, Donald Trump says that he is not directly linked with Project 2025. However, evidence shows that, as mentioned in the story, at least 70 people that used to work for the Heritage Foundation, which is the one that wrote this, work for his campaign now. It has shown to make an impact on his campaign and what happens in the past. So it's definitely interesting because whenever I was reading, sorry not to cut you off, when I was reading Trump's policy, the Republican policy one, they don't exactly match, but there's definitely some gaps where they can become one and the same.
Yes, no, I definitely think it's been a big talking point, and although he has ultimately said that he is not affiliated with it, his name is in it a decent amount of times too, which gives a lot of people reason to believe or some reason to think that he would be affiliated with it since, a name is attributed to it. But since he said he hasn't, we can just go based off of that.
Right.
And then to talk more specifically, I know it's also been a big discussion point because there's a lot of agendas in there that not many people are agreeing with or that are being brought to the forefront that a lot of people were thinking are pretty extreme for like some of his policies. I know a lot of the policies focused on removing a lot of the departments in the office, and I know a lot of people are scared about that, but if you read more, it has like a plan and that it's going to give that power back to the people. And so it's just something we'll have to wait and see. We don't know necessarily if it will go into office. Like we said, it was just something that was written. It's just a document. But it has a lot of stuff that can be broken down and that especially is important for this election.
Absolutely, and reading all this at once can definitely be it can be overwhelming. It can be a lot to see at once. However, some people can interpret it different ways. It can be giving freedom back to the people. Some people can think that it's being taken away. But, it's certainly something that only time will tell.
Yes, definitely. And after the election winner announcement, Donald Trump gave a winning speech. Reporter Annabella Gizzi has the details.
Donald Trump, the winner of the election that took place over the past 24 hours, gave his victory speech from West Palm Beach today at 2:30 a.m. after winning 3 crucial swing states, North Carolina, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. Trump spoke for 25 minutes and said that his campaign, quote, overcame obstacles that nobody thought possible, end quote. USA Today reports that he was referring to his 2 assassination attempts. Joining him on the stage was his wife, Melania Trump, along with his sons Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, and Barron Trump. His daughter Ivanka Trump joined them as well. J.D. Vance stood on the stage along with Dana White, the CEO of the Ultimate Fighting Championship. He addressed the nation with his main campaigning goals, immigration and the economy. He said he would, quote, fix our borders and fix everything about our economy, end quote. Another major point in his speech, USA Today reported, was when he promised to, quote, help our country heal, end quote.
Although losing the presidential election, candidate and Vice President Kamala Harris gave a concession speech. Reporter Alyssa Mandarak has the story.
Earlier this afternoon, Harris returned to her stage at Howard University in Washington, D.C. to give her official concession speech. Kamala walked out to a roaring crowd with American flags flying in the air and cheers of Kamala erupting through the audience, where the previous night supporters had been in disbelief and in tears as the results came in. Harris began her speech by thanking the crowd and her supporters, saying, quote, her heart was full today, end quote. Thanks to how her campaign was run and how the support she received, she thanked her husband, her running mate Tim Walz, and all of her staff who helped her put the campaign together in only 107 days. She continued by discussing her phone call with Trump earlier in the day and how she is committed to the peaceful transition of power and wanted to assist Trump in his transition because, quote, we owe loyalty not to a party or a candidate, but to the Constitution, end quote. Harris ended her speech doing her best to uplift the crowd, saying how she is proud of the work her campaign did, saying specifically to young voters that it is okay to be upset, but that the fight is not over, discussing the possibility of America entering a dark time. She told the crowd, quote, if it is, let us fill the sky with the light of a brilliant billions of stars, end quote.
That is a really touching speech that she gave, and I especially love the part when she said this is not the time to put our hands up, but to roll up our sleeves.
Yep.
Like, that is just a very touching, you know. I don't know if she came up with that on her own or just read it somewhere, but it's real good. So, But tell me more. Tell me more.
I mean, I know I watched it live before the show, and I really did like how she was like, during our campaign, we talked about, like, when we fight, we win, and obviously that didn't happen, but she was like, sometimes winning takes a long time. And I think that was really inspirational, and I think it's really important to hear that when especially a lot of people are really concerned about the outcome of this election.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I think both candidates definitely handled it in a respectable and, you know, very mature way. But what I thought was interesting is I actually read a couple minutes ago that, as I mentioned, Dana White was also on the stage with Donald Trump, and she said, quote, this is karma, ladies and gentlemen, he deserves this, end quote. Not really sure what that means. I wanted to know what you guys maybe thought about that, because there's something I found interesting and I wanted to look more into it.
I think we can see, like, with the political parties, each group is obviously feeling a different set of emotions right now. And I know with the Trump like supporters, they're very adamant on their support, and they're very open about who they support. And I think that that just kind of goes into it. I'm not necessarily sure if that was like a big derogatory take at the Democratic Party. It seems like it could have been, but I also know that the Democratic Party, they have shown that they're not going to be fazed by just words, that they're going to fight. Just like with the Republican Party, they said that they're going to fight through, and they did ultimately in this election. And then we look back at the Harris campaign, and she had 3 months to fight for her advocacy and to give her policies and her campaign statement out there. And for just three months of time, I think that she did a really good really good job at doing that. She garnered a lot of support, and this election was pretty close.
And I think, like, especially when you look at, like, people have been saying, like, Trump 2024 for 4 years now. Like, it's and he's had his supporters since 2016 and before that. So it's like to compare, like, how, like, not, I don't want to say how close, because obviously there's that, like, wide margin, but, like, just to see that compared is really, like, interesting to look at.
Right, absolutely. And I remember seeing it in 2020, the whole 2024 thing, and it's just crazy how it's come over time. But, you know, we'll just have to see how it keeps going. Well, coming up after the break, we will have a discussion on the events that led to Trump's victory.
Good job, guys.
Thank you.
To wrap up the night, we'll talk to our elections analyst, Ethan Rowinski, to discuss why the night resulted in a Trump victory.
No, yeah. So there are a lot of factors at play that went into this election. And not just, going into the election, why it happened so fast, I think is another big thing. So first of all, issues-wise, the Democrat Party and the Harris campaign, and even the Biden campaign before that, put a lot, if not all of their baskets into the abortion basket, into the issue of abortion and reproductive rights. It worked in 2022, just after Roe v. Wade got overturned.
Yes.
But this year, clearly, that did not work out for them. I mean, the issues of the economy and immigration soared over everything.
Yeah, one.
Yes, that's definitely interesting, for sure, which has been honestly my lead into most of these ad libs because it just simply is interesting. Like, this is just a very interesting day.
It's one that can be studied.
Yes, just watching. Like, I can imagine the textbooks, like, our kids will be reading one day, and this will be in there. We're living through it. So it's just, it's very interesting. So, seeing how, like, the economy and all of that stuff kind of soared over the abortion topic. I mean, like, people have their opinions about it. Abortion can be combated with so many topics, like people hit it with religion, like, as a fellow female, like I have my own perspectives on that, of course, but it's just interesting to see how all these topics have so many different layers to them.
Absolutely, and they're all interconnected too. It's not just, abortion is isolated or economy is isolated or immigration. They all play into each other, and they all play into, how people at the individual and at the group level, if you want to subdivide people, all vote into different categories, 100%.
Yes, and I definitely think, like, another aspect of how this election was handled is definitely the outside parties, candidates definitely taking a decent amount of the votes for Harris, especially in the swing states up in the east, like in the northeast, where it mattered the most for Harris to win, especially with Jill Stein.
That's one of the biggest ones.
That was one. Yes, that was one of the biggest. She was able to garner a lot of attraction. She did a lot of touring for her campaign. She was able to. She came here to Pittsburgh, as we saw. And so she was really good with her campaign this year, especially with her running mate. And then we also see a lot with the Senate as well for PA. A lot of the votes were given to the Independent Party for Casey and McCormick. And they are very close, neck and neck with that.
Absolutely. I don't believe that race has been called yet.
No, it has not, yes.
But, I mean, it's just all, like, the third-party influence is massive in this election, where, even, let's say, for example, we gave, all of the third-party votes to Harris, which isn't 100% true. That wouldn't have given Harris the victory, but just that influence, how did that affect, people who still voted for, the third-party talk? They decided to skip third party, go straight for Trump.
Yeah.
How much did that influence the election? We'll have to take, months, years analyzing the election and the results. Getting into, so we have these big issues, moving down a layer to what are the specific groups and how they kind of voted. One group where Harris absolutely faltered was white women specifically.
Yes.
In 2016, Harris won 13%, had 13% victory over Trump with that. In 2020 with Biden, I believe he won with 16 points. This year so far in preliminary data, she only got 10% of the electorate of white women. So she just did not pull through. She still won, but not in the numbers that she needed to, especially how much they thought was going to be with the abortion issue at the top, or at the top of the ticker, what they thought was going to be. Then on top of that, you can also look at Hispanic men was a very big one, where from 2020 to 2024, they swung 13 points towards Donald Trump. And there's a lot of issues that go into that. You have the large Catholic population, and so they don't want to elect a woman is a big part of it. And there's just they care a lot about the illegal immigration issue too. So all of that kind of plays into each other to, allowing Kamala Harris to lose and having Trump have a very decisive, quick victory in this election.
Yeah, no, and definitely with an election like this, with how big it was, we did not know where it was going to go, and with how it went, we just congratulations to the winner, and
and we'll have to see how this plays out.
Yes, we will.
Yeah.
Well, that's all. Thank you for tuning into this episode of NewsNight. If you want to see more, check out our social media pages on both Facebook and Instagram at UView Television.
You can also check out more episodes on our YouTube channel or our website, uview.pointpark.edu. I'm Juliana Brock.
I'm Ethan Rowinski.
And I'm Robert Fornatero. From everyone here at NewsNight, thank you for watching and have a great evening.